Well, today, the January 6th committee issued 6 new subpoenas that go to the heart of the Trump plan, as Donald Trump put it recently in a public statement, to, quote, overturn the election. Those were his words, overturn the election. 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump said that Vice President Mike Pence was empowered to overturn the election by simply deciding to throw out electoral votes officially presented to Congress on January 6th. That is a lie, of course. The vice president does not have the authority to change the outcome of the presidential election during the counting of the electoral votes on January 6th. But that was the plan, the Trump plan, a plan that could be a criminal conspiracy. In any plan or conspiracy, you at some point arrive at the then what moment, the moment where the answer to the question, then what, tells you whether your plan can succeed. It can be the moment when you discover that the people you are making plans with are completely crazy. The plan that was hatched by the old and feeble minds of Rudolph Giuliani and Donald Trump was focused on January 6th and the moment when they hoped that Mike Pence would simply reject electoral votes from Arizona and Pennsylvania and other states won by Joe Biden. Then what? What happens after Mike Pence rejects the electoral votes from Pennsylvania or Arizona? One answer to that was provided in the breaking news reporting on the Rachel Maddow show in the last hour when Alex Wagner revealed this letter addressed to the vice president from Arizona State Representative Jake Hoffman. Dear Mr. Vice President, I write to you on the eve of January 6th joint session of the United States Congress to approve the certification of the 2020 presidential election, to request that you, in your capacity as the President of the Senate and the presiding officer over the aforementioned joint session of Congress, delay the certification of the election results and instead seek clarification from the Arizona legislature as to which slate of presidential electors are proper and accurate. If Mike Pence rejected their electoral votes from Pennsylvania or Arizona, Donald Trump had a plan. In a subpoena to Pennsylvania Republican State Senator Douglas Mastriano, the January 6th committee today said, we understand that you have knowledge of and participated in a plan to arrange for an alternate slate of electors to be presented to the President of the Senate on January 6, 2021, and we understand that you spoke with former President Trump about your post-election activities. The President of the Senate on January 6th is, of course, Vice President Mike Pence. Doug Mastriano has had a slate of fake Republican electors to present to the Vice President on January 6th, and he was standing outside the Capitol building waiting for his moment with the Vice President. The committee's letter to Mr. Mastriano says, quote, based on your public statements, we understand that you were present during the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and that you witnessed agitators getting in the face of police and agitators start pushing the police up the Capitol steps. Those agitators were buying time for Mr. Mastriano to try to present his fraudulent slate of electors to the vice president. What did Donald Trump do during the attack on the Capitol? He was making phone calls asking for help with this plan. During the attack on the Capitol, Donald Trump spoke to freshman Senator Tommy Tuberville, asking him to rally support to overturn the election. Donald Trump used the time that the attack on the Capitol gave him to try to work the phones and make the plan work. Donald Trump used that time to try to get the fraudulent electors accepted in the congressional vote count of the Electoral College. Another member of the conspiracy to count fraudulent Republican electors was also there outside the Capitol building on January 6th, waiting for the then what moment, waiting for Mike Pence to reject the electors from Arizona. In the January 6th committee's letter to Arizona State Representative Mark Fincham today, the committee writes, quote, in the days after Arizona certified that Joseph Biden Jr. had won the 2020 presidential election, you advanced unsubstantiated claims about the election, including that it was rigged, that the American people had been robbed, and that the country was under assault by foreign powers. In addition, on November 30th, 2020, you helped organize a purported hearing at a Phoenix, Arizona hotel where representatives from former President Trump's legal team and others spoke and advanced unproven claims of election and voter fraud. During a break in the meeting, you reportedly claimed, not only do we have ballots that are improper, but we have an election system that's been hacked. In the days following the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol, you stated that you were also in Washington, D.C. to deliver an evidence book and letter to Vice President Pence showing key evidence of fraud in the Arizona presidential election and asking him to consider postponing the award of electors. You have also indicated that you were at the Capitol grounds on January 6th and took a few photos. Mark Fincham is now running for Secretary of State of Arizona with Donald Trump's endorsement, and Doug Mastriano is now a candidate for governor in Pennsylvania. Also subpoenaed today were two Trump campaign staffers, Michael Roman and Gary Michael Brown, who the committee says worked on the plan to name fraudulent Trump electors. Those subpoenas say, quote, the Select Committee is seeking information about efforts to send false slates of electors to Washington and change the outcome of the 2020 election. The leaders of the Arizona Republican Party and the Michigan Republican Party were also subpoenaed today. The committee's letter to Laura Cox, the former chairwoman of the Michigan Republican Party, says, quote, you reportedly were a witness when Rudy Giuliani pressured state lawmakers to disregard election results in Michigan, and when he said that certifying the election results would be a criminal act. The committee's letter to Kelly Ward, the chairwoman of the Arizona Republican Party, says, quote, in the days after the Associated Press and Fox News declared that now President Biden had won the presidential election in Arizona, you reportedly sent text messages to an Arizona election official in which you said, we need to stop the counting. Asked the official to contact a lawyer representing the Trump campaign and said, I know you don't want to be remembered as the guy who led the charge to certify a fraudulent election. You also apparently spoke with former President Trump and members of his staff about election certification issues in Arizona. And leading off our discussion tonight is Neil Katyal, law professor at Georgetown University and a former acting U.S. Solicitor General. He is an MSNBC legal analyst. And also with us is former Missouri United States Senator Claire McCaskill. She is an MSNBC political analyst. And Senator McCaskill, let me begin with you and your reaction to this new round of subpoenas by the January 6th committee.
Well, I always want to defer to the legal brain of Neil Katyal, but I do think there is evidence that needs to be sorted out here. Which came first? Convincing people to pose as fraudulent electors by telling them that they would only be used if the courts overturned an election, or the effort by the Trump campaign to go to courts and say, stop this election because we have other electors who have been chosen. It's a chicken and egg thing, but it would be very important in a fraud case to see what the inducement was. What was the state of mind? What were they trying to get done? Were they trying to do something fraudulently? I think that's the issue here with all these false electors and all of this paper trail of evidence that they are accumulating day after day after day. And I hope it all becomes clear once they get all this information in the door and they have the ability to synthesize it and get it out to the American people.
Neil Katyal, what do you see in these subpoenas? And I've been using the word plan as I described this tonight, but at some point the evidence might amount to a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah, Lawrence, I mean, it looks like alternative facts walked so that alternative electors could run. And Claire is exactly right. There's potential criminality here. It looks like finally the Republicans found some voting fraud, and the Justice Department is investigating now. And I think that there's something more than it's just criminal. It's more than that. It's a threat to the Republic. What these subpoenas, outline is basically a soft coup, not with arms, but with the kind of trappings of legalism. And in some ways, this velvet coup is even worse because it's not overt in the same way. And there was a really important piece by Judge Michael Ludig yesterday in the New York Times, a very conservative, brilliant judge. And the whole thrust of the piece was, this can happen again. Fake electors can be appointed again, and the Republican plan he just outlined was to have Congress then decide the presidential election and throw out the vote, just as this plan by these letters in Congress today said. And so we need prosecution, first investigation, and then ultimately prosecution if the facts look the way they do, not just against the state officials, but also against any higher ups. And Lawrence, as you suggested, these letters suggest that there's involvement of people in Washington, D.C. that may very well amount to a criminal conspiracy going all the way up and into the White House.
Senator McCaskill, this is a version of identity theft. Arizona had electors, duly elected electors. Pennsylvania had duly elected electors. They were pledged to Joe Biden because Joe Biden won the state. To have other people and that you have this Arizona state representative writing a letter that was revealed on the Rachel Maddow show tonight to Mike Pence saying we have other electors. This is what's happening in the world of identity theft every day, except they were trying to do it on January 6th.
Yeah, it's really democracy theft. Masquerading as identity theft. It is taking away the votes of the American people and the decision that they made. And I might point out here that all roads lead through Rudy Giuliani, all of them. He was the ringleader of this circus. And when you think about that phone call you referenced to Senator, I don't know, I think he called someone and thought it was Senator Tuberville, because I think he called the wrong person. He made that call after we had witnessed a mob attack the police officers at our Capitol, break windows, stab police officers with flagpoles, attack them with chemicals, try to break in the House of Representatives and just chanting to hang the vice president. After that happened, Rudy Giuliani was making calls to senators saying, okay, you're going to reconvene at 8 o'clock, hold everything, don't do it. We've got a plan, a fraudulent plan. So Rudy Giuliani is really going to be the key player in this thing, whether it's him threatening without any reason the people in Michigan to do false electors, or whether it's him actually calling senators after the insurrection to try to get them to do the big lie bidding.
Neil Katyal, can Rudy Giuliani try to make a kind of global immunity deal with the January 6th committee and say he has immunity from federal charges, he has immunity from charges possibly in New York, he has immunity from charges from state prosecution in Georgia, where there's currently an investigation?
Yeah, Lawrence, almost impossible. I mean, Congress can give immunity for themselves, but to require federal immunity would require the Justice Department to sign on, and to have state immunity would require state officials to sign on. For that reason, I'm quite skeptical of the reports today that Rudy has flipped on Trump and is fully cooperating with the congressional investigation. I think those are rumors and unlikely to be true. I mean, Rudy just went on television a few hours ago saying that Eminem should leave this country because he took a knee during the Super Bowl. So he sure seems like the same kind of Rudy he always has been. And, as of this year, Eminem released Lose Yourself 2 decades ago. And it would seem that Rudy has spent the last 20 years taking those lyrics very literally. So no, I don't buy this at all, and I don't think there's an immunity deal. But it would be a wonderful thing if if Giuliani did the right thing and told the truth about his involvement and so on. But I doubt it.
Neil Katyal and Claire McCaskill, thank you both very much for leading off our discussions tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up today, Vladimir Putin said that he was withdrawing some Russian. Today, Veronica De La Rosa said this.
Today marks an inflection point when our duty of care to our children as a society finally supersedes the bottom line of an industry that made such an atrocity as Sandy Hook possible to begin with. Today is a day of accountability for an industry that has thus far enjoyed operating with immunity and impunity. And for this, I am grateful.
Veronica De La Rosa lost her 6-year-old son to the mass murderer who used a Remington AR-15 rifle to fire 154 bullets in less than 5 minutes, killing 20 first graders and kindergarten students and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut in 2012. Today, the families of 9 of the victims of that mass murder reached a settlement with the manufacturer of the Remington AR-15, a settlement for $73 million. It is the first time a gun manufacturer has faced liability for a mass shooting. Today, President Biden called it a historic settlement and said, while this settlement does not erase the pain of that tragic day, it does begin the necessary work of holding gun manufacturers accountable for manufacturing weapons of war and irresponsibly marketing these firearms. This is how Remington marketed the weapon to both responsible gun owners and mass murderers who have made the AR-15 their favorite mass murder weapon. President Biden said, we can deliver a clear message to gun manufacturers and dealers. They must either change their business models to be part of the solution for the gun violence epidemic, or they will bear the financial cost of their complicity. Joining our discussion now is Shannon Watts. She is the founder of Moms Demand Action, a group she began after the Sandy Hook shooting to advocate for gun safety measures. And back with us is former Senator Claire McCaskill. And Shannon Watts, let me begin with you. You've been tracking this daily as this case has moved along. What is the importance of this settlement today?
Well, you know, I'm not a survivor of gun violence or the Sandy Hook community, but I cannot even imagine or speak to what this means to them. But it is really has been their tenacity that this major movement, right, that a gun manufacturer is finally being held accountable. It is such an important moment. And really, this settlement should strike fear into the hearts of the gun industry, and particularly their CEOs. They have gotten away with utterly disregarding public safety, and they should be held accountable, manufacturers and sellers, for their reckless business practices. They have had almost complete legal immunity due to Congress providing them that protection back in 2005. And this really is sort of a chink in the armor. And it's our job now to continue chipping away at those weak spots until there is real accountability among gun manufacturers.
Let's listen to what attorney Josh Koskoff said today. He represents the families.
This case was never about damages in the sense of compensation. It was about damages in the sense of forcing change. These families, they would pay everything, they'd give it all back just for 1 minute. That would be true justice. And the linchpin of this settlement is that it allows these families the rights to share the information as to what they learned with the public.
Claire McCaskill, that point he made about what the lawyers and the families have discovered through the discovery process in this lawsuit will be made public. That can be extremely damaging to Remington as well as the industry.
Yeah, they fought for that. That was a key piece of this settlement. Maybe more important to the families than the amount of money that they would receive was they could lay bare the marketing plan of this company in trying to push these weapons of war on the American public. But let me just say, Congress failed after Sandy Hook. And while today is really important and we're all so glad that there's finally been some sense of justice over Sandy Hook, Congress failed. There is federal immunity from these lawsuits. This lawsuit actually succeeded because there was a state statute having to do with consumer protection. It was the marketing of this gun that allowed the legal basis for this settlement. And there are other states that have similar laws, but there's a whole lot of states, Lawrence, that don't. In fact, there was just a case in Nevada where the court there said no to a lawsuit by one of the many victims of the bump stock shooting in Las Vegas because Nevada has a law that protects the gun manufacturers, gives them immunity. So I want us to celebrate this sense of justice today, particularly for those families and their incredible loss. But we got to double our efforts because most Americans want there to be more gun safety laws in place. We are the world's leader of massacre of our own citizens by weapons of war.
Shannon Watts, many of us have thought that product liability litigation is an obvious route to getting some control over this, but there is an exemption in product liability law that's saying that no, you cannot sue people for the inherent manufacturers for the inherent danger of this device that they make, guns. Whereas you could do it if you found a danger in the manufacturing of any other good. You could sue under product liability law, saying that that object is defective and dangerous in its very design. It is, but the one thing that you can't do that with is the product that is designed to kill people.
Yeah, I mean, if you look across all industries, right, from automobiles to tobacco to most consumer products, even opioid manufacturers, legal accountability has driven innovation. And it includes new safety features and responsible sales and marketing practice, all things that are designed to save lives. And because Congress gave the gun manufacturers and dealers this immunity, they've really been shielded against efforts to hold reckless actors accountable. What is so heartening is that this settlement shows that that shield is not impenetrable. And we are making real progress in state houses and in courthouses all across the country. For example, last year, New York really put up a new law that will allow gun manufacturers there to be sued, that goes up against PLACA. The governor of New Jersey is talking about doing something similar. So this should serve as a wake-up call for the gun industry. You know, if you act recklessly and illegally, you will be held accountable.
Senator Caskell, I want to consider what it took for members of these families to do this. Entering this kind of litigation meant that, to some degree, what happened to their children, what happened in Sandy Hook that day, was going to be with them every day in a fairly vivid way, every day of this litigation, which has gone on for years and years now. And the strength that it took for them as plaintiffs just to engage in this case.
Yeah, and this case has had a torturous path. You can imagine, I mean, it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declined to rule on behalf of the gun manufacturers in this case. And so this has really been a long haul. Keep in mind, it's been almost 10 years since this tragedy occurred. So, of course, these families had to live with this. And I thought it was telling how emotional the lawyer got today. You know, I think sometimes people forget that there are lawyers that really feel their cases emotionally. And clearly, that lawyer who has lived with those families, held their hand, told them not to give up, said, we will keep fighting. He today also had an incredible amount of emotion about what they have done and what they are now going to be able to do. And he can now share this with other lawyers in other states that have similar statutes, which will give them an opening, as Shannon said, that maybe we can begin to pierce this immunity with marketing tactics that the gun manufacturers have used, especially in states that are less friendly to weapons of war flooding the streets.
Claire McCaskill and Shannon Watts, thank you both very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And up next, we continue our series on the supremely qualified women